So we kick off Jesus' second year. Some call it the year of popularity. Of course, he wasn't popular with everyone. His popularity with the religious leaders was starting to plummet. So John chapter 5 verses 1 to 15. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame and the paralysed. And one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." And Jesus said, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "Oh, it's the Sabbath. The law forbids you to pick up your mat." But he replied, "Well, the man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Well, who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk?" The man had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again, but stop sinning or something worse may happen to you." So the man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well. So this is interesting on several levels. Firstly, the people at a custom where paralysed or blind people believed that angels stirred the water of the pool of Bethesda. And if they got into the water when it was being stirred, they would then be healed. I guess it was similar to taking the water as a bath in England or praying for healing at Lourdes. I have no idea how effective it was. But suddenly in comes Jesus and he upends everything. Or at least he does for one man. We're not sure why he picked this particular individual. Perhaps he'd been there the longest. That could be why. In The Chosen, they give this man a whole backstory, which is very moving. But in other productions I've seen, Jesus literally picks up a man at random. I don't think it was at random, but it is a curious situation. Why just one? Anyway, nevertheless, the man is healed. But it brings out a new situation about the Sabbath. And suddenly it's not about one man being healed of 38 years of paralysis, but rather it's about showing the paralysis in the religious leaders at the time and their thinking. So they were looking for a reason to pick trouble with Jesus, and they got it. You see, it was one thing for a man to be healed on a Sabbath, which was still frowned upon, as we shall see in later episodes. But the leaders pick on the man for carrying his mat on a Sabbath. He'd just been healed for 38 years of paralysis. They didn't care about that. They didn't care about the man or his story or the individual at all. They only cared about the fact that he'd picked up his mat on a Sabbath. How bizarre. Observing the Sabbath was their obsession. They didn't give two hoots about a transformed individual. Their eyes were fixed on the wrong thing. And it's interesting too that Jesus slipped away. His time had not yet come to confront the religious leaders. That day would come.